Welcome to today's explainer, everyone. Look, if you manage a growing cloud desktop environment, you already know that scaling up usually brings, well, a whole new set of headaches. Today, we're breaking down the release notes for Nerdio Manager for Enterprise 8.1. We are going to explore exactly how this release is engineered to give you back your control, your structure, and your visibility as that Windows Cloud footprint matures. Because honestly, it's time to leave the chaos behind.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Have you ever just stared at your Azure Virtual Desktop host pools and thought, how on earth did we end up with this many? And maybe more importantly, how did we end up tracking all of them in a dozen different incredibly fragile spreadsheets? You know exactly how it goes. A new department onboards, someone spins up another host pool just for a temporary fix, and then suddenly, 6 months later, you basically need an ancient decoder ring just to figure out why user assignment works the way it does.
Dave Fisk, the guy who actually penned these release notes, he completely nails this shared IT trauma. He writes, I lived a version of this problem for 22 years on the Citrix side, watching admins build increasingly creative, read fragile, ways to keep environments organized as they scaled. It is just such a relatable problem. And the hard truth is, it doesn't magically get any easier just because the underlying platform swapped over to AVD or Windows 365. That fundamental scaling problem, it absolutely remains.
So here's our roadmap to tackle this today. First, we'll hit the spreadsheet problem. Second, taming AVD with global pools. Third, fixing that black hole of automation and visibility. Fourth, managing Windows 365 directly. And finally, the flexibility to change your mind later on. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the spreadsheet problem, or the scaling dilemma. Here's the core issue. As your Windows Cloud footprint grows, manual user assignment just completely falls apart. And that is exactly the environment Nerdio Manager 8.1 is built to address. Think of this release as your ultimate toolkit designed to basically cure the chaos of scaling. It gives us 4 main antidotes: way more structure for large AVD deployments, tighter control over how your automation actually runs, way better visibility when something inevitably breaks, and the flexibility to adjust your desktop models down the line.
Which brings us right to Section 2, taming AVD with global pools.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that this is the absolute headline feature of the 8.1 release. If you're managing more than just a handful of host pools, you're going to want to hear this. Global Pools, which is currently in preview for the premium tier, by the way, allows you to organize all those scattered host pools into unified pool groups. This brings a desperately needed layer of structure to those massive deployments by unlocking streamlined, policy-based assignment. This right here is where the massive value lies. We are completely tossing out the old manual way of doing things. You know, that tedious, soul-crushing process where someone has to manually update a spreadsheet to decide who goes where. The new way uses automated placement driven purely by enter group membership. You just set up the assignment policies and boom, the system handles the rest. You even get this user assignments view so you can easily see exactly where every single user lands.
And tied right into this is a failover policy, which lets you move users to another pool group when things go south. So the crucial point is that this failover is entirely admin-initiated. That's right, it is not some rogue automatic disaster recovery feature that might trigger when you really don't want it to. You, the administrator, identify the actual issue, and you decide exactly when to pull the trigger to move those users. You keep full control of the whole shebang.
All right, let's shift gears to Section 3, fixing the black hole, focusing on automation and visibility.
Now, automation is fantastic, right? Well, up until 40 different tasks try to run at the exact same millisecond and your entire environment basically starts to sweat. To stop your deployment from choking under its own weight, 8.1 introduces the Scripted Sequences Concurrency Balancer, also in preview. It puts a hard ceiling on execution load, and you can set that globally or per specific host pool. It's a super simple concept, but honestly, if you've ever watched a 9 a.m. login storm grind your automation to a total halt, you know exactly why this cap is a total lifesaver.
And then there's the troubleshooting side of things. Every admin out there knows the sheer dread of the black hole of death. That one session that just hangs forever because a host went quietly unresponsive. The real headache usually isn't even the failure itself, it's how incredibly long it takes to find the culprit host. So ATM1 adds an AVD host overview right into real-time insights, giving you instant metrics at the host level. We're talking CPU, memory, session state, session load, and even session input delay.
Now, just to be super clear, this tool is not going to magically fix the hung host for you automatically. But look at what it actually does do. When you combine those metrics with precise date and time range pickers, plus the ability to drill straight down from an alert into the relevant graph, it gets you to the answer of what happened and exactly where did it happen instantly. It cuts your troubleshooting time down drastically.
Moving right along to Section 4, Managing Windows 365 Directly.
If you've got Windows 365 running alongside everything else, you can now manage the Windows 365 User Experience Sync directly inside Nerdio Manager. Turn the sync on or off, pick your storage sizes, double-check which users and devices are actually covered by a provisioning policy, or even delete profiles. Just a quick clarifier, User Experience Sync itself is a Microsoft capability, but 8.1 lets you control all of those levers seamlessly without ever having to leave the Nerdio Manager interface you're already living in.
And this brilliantly illustrates how 8.1 is really leaning into the future of cloud PCs. You now get this proactive inline visibility and configuration for AI-enabled features. You can actually see Microsoft's requirements guidance right there on the screen and easily validate your Frontier enrollment. Nerdio isn't building the underlying AI, of course, but they are giving you the exact tools you need to audit your AI readiness well before leadership comes knocking on your door asking for an update.
To make auditing that fleet even easier, there is a brand new AI status column slapped right on the All Devices grid. So at a glance, you can check the status of your entire cloud PC fleet on a per-device basis. You'll know immediately if a device is ready to use, ready, eligible for an upgrade, or if it outright failed. It is instant, highly actionable intelligence for your fleet.
Which brings us to our last stop, Section 5, Flexibility to Change Later. Because let's face it, business needs change all the time, and your IT infrastructure simply has to be able to pivot. Nerdio Migrate is expanding what you can actually move between different desktop models. Specifically, the migration pathway from AVD Personal over to Windows 365 Enterprise is now generally available. Nerdio is being very transparent here, by the way. Not every single migration pathway is at the exact same stage of availability just yet, and they prefer to be completely upfront about that rather than having you find out halfway through some massive project.
So why does this kind of transparency and flexibility matter so much? Well, as the source points out, the desktop model that fit a user or team a year ago might not fit them today, and having real pathways to adjust matters more the bigger your environment gets. You absolutely need the ability to adapt your strategy without being forced into a complete, ground-up rebuild every single time a department changes how they work.
Oh, and rounding out the updates, we've got a really meaningful compliance addition here too. Console Connect now officially supports the Japan region for data residency. If you have teams, users, or specific legal requirements based in Japan, this is a pretty crucial update that ensures your management traffic stays fully compliant with local data regulations.
Let's move to wrap this up and see how all this builds into the big picture. Nerdio Manager for Enterprise 8.1 has one unmistakable theme. As your Windows Cloud environment scales, you are getting more structure around your user placement, tighter control over your automation, lightning-fast answers when things break, and the ultimate flexibility to adjust your strategy. It is officially time to leave that "we'll just figure it out" in a giant spreadsheet era behind for good.
Now, you obviously don't need to implement every single one of these updates on day one. But as you look at your own growing deployment, I want you to ask yourself, which of these loud IT problems are you going to silence first today? Is it going to be reining in your host pools, capping your automation, or maybe finally getting ahead of your AI readiness? The tools are right there in your hands now. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, happy optimizing!